Hey all the future assistant professors, today we are going to study Matthew Arnold, one of the most influential Victorian critic. Arnold is often seen as the first modern literary critic. So this is very important. Make sure you write it down in your notes copy, because he was the first modern literary critic. Why? Because he shifted the focus from criticism, mere criticism, like people were just telling how to criticize and of the text, but he took it to the broader level, to the culture and the social question. So today we are going to talk about him. So without any further delay, let's get started. So he was born in 1822, Laleham in England. So he was known for both as a poet, Dover Beach, the scholar gypsy, and as a prose critic. Okay. He became professor of poetry at Oxford 1857 to 1867, the first critic to hold such a chair. So you can mention this also, okay? He believed that literature has a moral and a cultural function in shaping society. And that is why he educated people that how to analyze the criticism. Like we have started our series from the Roman and the Greeks, we know that they have given such rules, but they did not let us know that how actually you want to clear the things. Now we'll be talking about the major works of criticism one by one. The very first one is a preface to poem, and this he has talked about, and this is considered as manifesto of poetic theory. He criticized the subjective romantic poetry like Shelley's. He advocated for objective classical restraints in poetry. He praised what? Now this is the important thing. He praised what? He praised Greek writers like Sophocles and their grand style. Basically, he was concerned with the classics. He loved classics, and that is why he have taken the thing that whatever you want to do, whatever you want to write, make sure you include classics and you write on basis of that. He argued that poetry should deal with the great human themes and not with just personal emotion. He always talked about the unbiasedness. Okay. So, and in this, he has also given one concept that we'll be talking of architectness in the later section. First, we'll be dealing with the major works, okay? Then, in the Culture and Anarchy, he talks about, this is the most famous prose work. Please mention it. Please write this in your copy. He defines culture as a study of perfection. He talks about how you are going to talk about, and if you have attempted June 2025, you might have seen a lot of questions from this section, and it is the most repeated work, and you get the mostly questions from this particular work. So make sure you read this in detail. Now he has divided the societies into three classes. Barbarians, that is aristocracy, focused on manners and sports. Then he has talked about Philistines, that is the middle class. They always focused on money and the material success. And then populace, they are the working class, often ignorant and disorderly. So he talks about that sweetness and light, this is the harmony of beauty and intelligence, and as the true aim of culture, how he is going to make the culture. He criticizes anarchic individualism and stresses education and criticism to uplift society. So he, when you talk about his culture and anarchy, he has dealt a detail upon the barbarians, the Philistines and the populace. He has talked about कैसे आप अपने culture को perfect बना सकते हैं. What are the good points? How you can make your culture great. Then he moves forward with the third work, the study of poetry. He argues that poetry will replace religion as a guide to life in the modern age. Why did he say? He says that poetry is the life. Poetry is a mirror to life. What you are reading, that is the mirror. That is the mirror of life. And it is very superior to philosophy, science and to religion. That's what he says, that poetry will replace religion. And then he introduces the touchstone method. He says that the best way to judge a poem is to compare it with the lines from the great poets like Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, Milton. He says that if you want to judge a poem, like there is a piece of a poem, now you want to judge whether it is good or bad. He says that compare the lines with the lines of the poem from Shakespeare, Homer, Dante and Milton. He says that good poetry should have high truth and high seriousness. Means it should not just talk about like vague things, but it should be real. High seriousness. He believes poetry is a criticism of life and expressed in the best words. And that what he says, that poetry is the critics of the life, that laws of poetic beauty, growth. Poetry is a substitute to religion. Okay. Now, in the next work, we have seen the essay in criticism. It is a collection of essays on Goethe, Joubert, Milton, and others. He defines the function of criticism. Criticism is disinterested effort to learn and propagate the best that is known and thought in the world. A critic should be free from personal and political bias. And this is very important. Whenever you are writing a work, you should be free from personal biases. That, okay, if I am liking Milton, suppose I do like Milton and Dryden a lot. So if I will be critiquing, I might be biased, right? I will be liking all the works of Milton and Dryden, despite they might be having a lot of flaws. But that what Arnold says, that you should be free from personal biasness or the political biasness. Go for a critic should be unbiased. Make sure you remember this. A critic should be unbiased. That is the main thing. Now we'll be talking about the concepts that is given by Matthew Arnold. He says that in function of criticism, he says that criticism is not the mere fault finding. In the very starting, I told you that criticism does not mean the negative comments. Criticism means you are evaluating the work, you are evaluating the piece of work, and then suggesting whether it is good, whether it is bad, whether you can improve it or not, whether it has been compared to the classes, whether it has a good truth, whether it has the high seriousness or not. So this is what evaluating and criticism means. Not everyone can do criticism. Why? Because it is not everybody's cup of tea. Teaching, I consider teaching as an art. I do consider teaching as an art. Not everyone can be great teacher. It might be 100 people can teach, but there will be only 10 who teach with passion. So that what it says, that not everybody's cup of tea to criticize thing. And that what is not just fault finding. Teaching, I do teach with my passion. I do teach. Some people teach for money. Some people teach for job as a work, but I teach for passion. So criticism is not everybody's cup of tea. That what it says, that it's not fault finding. It is a disinterested pursuit of truth. Criticism should prepare the ground for creativity by spreading good ideas. See, it is very important line. Very beautifully he says that it is the art of judgment on the basis for the creativity by the spreading of good ideas. Okay, very great. You should mention this point. Then he has given the second concept, architectonics. Arnold borrowed his term from the architecture. What does that mean? Structural unity in poetry. All parts of poem should be form an organic whole. He's saying that no poet or writer should be judged on a single line. Only one line you cannot judge. Please consider the whole poem and then you can explain. Then you can understand the whole effect of the part. That's what he says. Okay, then in the next, views on poetry. What are the views on the poetry? He says that poetry should not be just decorative, it must guide humanity, and I cannot agree more with him. He says that study of poetry, it is it is in study of poetry. He says poetry is the representation of life. Poetry is the representation of life, and that's what he says. Poetry says that science is incomplete. Even poetry says that science is incomplete with poetry. You should be having the essence of poem in life to sustain. It is the breathe and the finer spirit of knowledge. Poetry is something that it gives you the life, it gives you the poetic beauty, right? So that's what he says, that poetry is a criticism of life. Then now we'll be moving forward. What makes a good poem? So I have made a very, I have done a deep study on this, and I thought that you should be knowing, you don't have to know everything, but you should be knowing what is the most important thing. He says that high truth and high seriousness should be there. What does high truth mean? High truth means it should be moral. It should stick to the moral. It should give instruction. It should give hope. It should give values to the humanity. It should guide humans, right? High truth, high seriousness. What does that matter? He says that whenever you are writing something, please go and consider the ancient writers. And ancient writers like Aristotle, like Milton, like Homer, like Dante. So that's what he says, that He says that diction should be there, and he says Homer is the best model for the simple grand style, and Milton is the best model for severe grand style, and Dante provides both, so he is the best out of all. Then at last he says that what makes a good critic? So a critic must be objective, impartial and cultured. He should compare works with the greatest achievements in literature. In short, he talks about real estimate. Real estimate means your criticism should be unbiased. Okay. Then means it can be historic or it can be personal estimate. Now what does that historic means? Historic means when we say no, old is gold, like all the movies now we see like, oh my god, so good movie, so great movie it was. So we give the context. If we are judging an old movie, we will be saying, oh, it is the very best, it is the awesome one, right? And then personal, if I would say Milton and Dryden is my personal favorite, I would be giving all the biasness to them. So that's what he is saying. That what he is saying, that if you are doing the criticism, make sure you do the real estimate. Don't go for the historic estimate or don't go for the personal estimate, because both will end up in the bad critics if you are biased, and if you are, so you will be giving bad criticism. So that what he says, that always go for the real criticism and always use touchstone method and always compare with the ancient work. Then what is a touchstone method? So touchstone method that was introduced in the study of poetry. He says that a critic should use the short passages from classical masters as touchstones to test the value of contemporary works. Limitation was that overemphasis on the line and not the whole works. What did he say? That if you want to analyze the poetry to determine whether it is a good poetry or it is a bad poetry, what you need to do, you will need to go for the sublime. Sublime of, you will tell me in the comment section which critic has given the concept sublime. Okay, I'm just giving you the hint. Who has talked about the sublime, who has talked about the good things, lofty mind. And then a critic should compare his poetry from the passage of great old poetry, and this passage must be comparative in the use of this. So if you want to talk about which critic you should compare with, so you should compare with Homer, you should compare with Dante, you should compare with Shakespeare, and my favorite, Milton. Okay, so they all possesses high quality, and that is why you should always compare with this thing. Okay, now we'll be talking about the practical criticism. It is very important, and a lot of PYQs has been asked from this. So unlike critics who only build theories like we have already discussed, Arnold was the one, he practically applied his ideas on real poets like Chaucer. He did criticism. He is not just preaching. He is not just preaching, but he is teaching also, right? He said he has applied all the theories. Even modern poets of his own time, his judgment reflects his famous emphasis on high seriousness and the moral function of poetry. Arnold and Chaucer, he says that he admired Chaucer for freshness, naturalness and narrative charm. He says that he is truth to life. The Canterbury Tales, beautifully awesome. And if you haven't read it, please go and read it. It's awesome. I have already explained it. You can go and watch it. Beautifully reflects English society of the 14th century. However, Arnold believed Chaucer lacked what? He lacked the high seriousness that he considered essential for the greatest poetry. He do admire Chaucer. Matthew Arnold do admire Chaucer, but he's saying that he is lacking the high seriousness, जो कि इनका बेस था. अभी हम लोग जितना बार भी पढ़े, we are saying touchstone method, high seriousness, high truth होना चाहिए, high seriousness होना चाहिए, और वही तो ये lack कर रहे हैं, तो फिर कैसे काम चलेगा? ठीक है? So that what he says. By high seriousness, Arnold meant a deep moral, spiritual vision that elevates poetry beyond the mere storytelling. Poetry does not like कि आपको सिर्फ storytelling है. He has given also example that Chaucer delights us with humor and realism, but does not probe the tragic depth of human existence like Homer. So basically, he is on the side of ancients and classists. So that is why it is very important to keep this point in mind. Okay. Now, Arnold on Shakespeare. What did Arnold talk about Shakespeare? Arnold praised Shakespeare for supreme artistic genius. For him, Shakespeare had unmatched dramatic power, characterizations, and imaginations. He said that he is a classic. Why? Because according to his architectonic works here. Then he had all the reliance on the ancient, that he took all the theories, all the stories for his plots from the ancient, and he has shown the intense feelings. So that is why he says that Shakespeare is great, he was classics, but still he also found the faults in him. He says that he uses, I'm writing limitations, he says he uses a lot of complex word that is not easy to for the young or modern poet. He uses excessive imagery, and Matthew Arnold hates him for this. And it is not simple work, like he could have said that in simple work. So that's what he says, that limitation, that he lacked the moral depth or ethical seriousness. He admired for greatness but wanted his plays to embody more ethical visions like the Greek tragedians. So the shows Arnold's tendency to measure even the greatest poets against his touchstone method and demand for high seriousness. Like nobody could have done this, like, you know, going against Shakespeare and like putting the touchstone method is literally only Matthew Arnold can do. When I was reading him, I was hating him, like how can he talk about Shakespeare like that? I mean, he's the great man. And still, and also in praise he says about Shakespeare, I'm quoting his lines, in England their miracle of genius like Shakespeare to produce a balance of mind. Repeating it again, he says in England there needs miracle of genius like Shakespeare to produce a balance of mind. That's what he has to say about Shakespeare. He also says that, I keep saying, Shakespeare, you are as obscure as life is. So he is praising a lot, but at the same time he's saying that he lacks high seriousness. You have to follow the Greek tragedians. So that's what he is saying about that. He also says that Arnold on Modern Poet 90, he says that he criticized many contemporary poets for being too personal. That's what I'm talking about. Emotional or rhetorical. He also saw the lack of classical restraint and moral strength. He says that he admired Milton for the grandeur and high seriousness, but found that most 19th century poets below that standard. So that's what he says, that he wanted English poetry to return to the calm objectivity and moral elevation of the Greek and the classical tradition. He says that key idea, high seriousness in action. Arnold's practical criticism was not just about the judging style that we started now. He judged poetry on whatever gave readers moral and spiritual. He has talked about that, yes, high truth and high seriousness, HT and HS. Chaucer was delightful but shallow. Shakespeare was genial but sometimes morally thin, or he was like, he used to say things in real but he was saying a lot. Milton and the Greeks, models of high seriousness. That is why his judgment literally feel a bit severe, and literally he wanted poetry to inspire, guide and elevate humanity, that he was saying from long. Now there was one more concept that I missed out. It was in culture and anarchy. Hebraism and Hellenism. Okay, what does that mean? Hebraism means knowing what you are doing is best for you. Like you do yoga. If you do yoga for 30 minutes for your life, you will say it's best. You know you are doing great for your body. You will never doubt yourself that you are wasting time. No, if you do yoga, if you do walking, you know that you are doing great. You will never doubt yourself, right? You will never doubt yourself. But it is the opposite of Hebraism. In Hellenism, you are about to question everything. What? Everything. Like you are never believing anything. You are questioning about how I am doing, whether I am doing it right or not, whether my yoga poses are great or not, whether I am walking in a straight line or not, whether I am wearing like a yoga dress or not, whether I am fully ready or not. So these are the questions that you get. So this is the Hellenism, and this shows the thoughts which Greek people had, like Socrates. They always used for the big question, they question everything. How to make yourself perfect. That was his idea, right? So Hebraism is like action. You are taking action and you're knowing that is great for you. In Hellenism, you question everything. So that's it for today. Now we'll just look out what we have discussed today in the Matthew, and it is very important. He is very, 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 very important, and that is why he is also called as the critic. I'll be writing this because I don't know you people are writing. Please do let me know whether are you making notes or not. So he has also called as the modern critic. I'm writing here, modern critic, and critiques critic. Okay, so make sure you remember all these important points because he is very, very, very important. We discussed his background, we discussed his important work, Preface to Poems, Culture and Anarchy, then the study of poetry, then the essay in criticism, then we discussed all the critical concepts, that what is the function of criticism, what is the architectonics, what is the views on poetry, what makes a good poem, what makes a good critics, then touchstone method, then practical criticism. Then in the practical criticism we defined each and everything, that how he talked about Arnold and Chaucer, how he talked about Shakespeare, how he talked about the modern poets, then we talked about what is the high seriousness in action, and then this is the next, like 3 4 5, this is the in Culture and Anarchy. Then we discussed what is Hebraism and what is Hellenism. So this was it for today. In the next video I'll be discussing the PYQs because this video is going to be very long, so I don't want it to make a long. So please stay tuned for the next video, and only one video is left of T.S. Eliot, and our whole literary criticism will be completed for your examination. So if you found this video helpful, do not forget to like, share with your friends those who are preparing for UGC NET, and subscribe for the complete syllabus and all the latest updates. Till then, take care, keep learning, keep shining. Bye bye.